lost big on Tuesday, but there was another big loser, George Soros. I feel bad for him. Kind of. President actually hopped onto a conference call with MoveOn.org, one of Spooky Dude's shady operations. He must have been celebrating something. I don't really know, but you know, it's amazing. If you look at how much money this billionaire is spending to try to get his agenda jammed through, man, George, you could call the 2010 election a failure on the Soros front. I don't mean to be harsh, but I guess he's kind of feeling the effects of his own orderly decline of the dollar. Greenbacks just aren't going as far as they used to, huh, Georgie? Don't you feel bad? You know, it's amazing. The more we expose on this program about how this whole system operates, the more we show how progressives like this guy just funnel money around and to influence policy and elections, you know, like through the Tides Foundations and stuff like that. Man, the more we show how these guys are just enriching themselves with power and money, the less powerful the spooky dude becomes. It's weird. It's almost like sunlight is the best disinfectant. George, here's the thing. We're going to have to go over, just because I don't mean to rub salt in it at all, but I just would like American people to know how Spooky Dude fared around this time all around the country. Secretary of State project. This is great. He started this after Catherine Harris stole the 2000 election. And he's like, Secretary of States, they've got a lot of power, no? Yes, yes. And so when there's something going on, let's say, I can't think of an organization that might, you know, organize, you know, people into voting and just shady. Anyway, let's say there's some shady goings on someplace. Well, the Secretary of State has to decide, is this good or is this bad? What is it? Do we do a recount or not? So Spooky Dude would like to control them. So how did the Soros-backed Secretary of State fare in the election? Success? Uh-oh, failure. Republicans won 17 out of 26 races, 6 of them offices from Democrats. Republicans now control 25 offices to Democrats 22. Soros also backed a measure that would put control of redistricting back into the hands of the state legislature, which would have helped the Democrats redistricting. Uh-oh, failure again. George, it might get too painful for you to watch. Soros also led the charge on a proposition in Nevada on retention of judges. This is a great idea. Judges would be appointed instead of voted on. I mean, welcome to the Glenn Beck program. America, tonight I ask you to watch this program with an open mind. I ask you to put your partisan differences aside and really listen, and then do your own homework. Don't take my word for it. Research yourself. This is far too important. The topic tonight and tomorrow night, George Soros. There are things that are happening in this country that don't make sense. Van Jones said something that bothered me over the summer. I mean, he said a lot of things over the years that have bothered me, but one comment in particular over the summer stuck with me, and it was this.
You handle the top down, but it's also bottom up and inside out. Top down, bottom up, and inside out. So now your challenge as you leave here, our challenge, is to take care of that bottom up part and that inside out part, the heart part.
That's bothered me, because I know who this guy is. He's a communist revolutionary, a guy who pined for the days of Stalin. The Iron Curtain went down. Something's wrong there. Well, it really bothered me until recently, when I started looking into all the George Soros connections and the size and the scope of his reach. And let me tell you something. I said to you, read up on George Soros. There's plenty of ways to read about him. These are all books about George Soros, many of them written by him. So there's no shortage of information, and read them, read them. The comment doesn't bother me anymore. I understand what it means. And that's why that comment now put the curtain and reveal what that actually means, and it will terrify you. There's a couple of other things that you'll understand. First of all, in 2003, Soros and a partner funded the new $5 million liberal group, MoveOn.org. Well, MoveOn.org, what exactly is that? Well, you remember it. This is the group that originally called General Petraeus General Betrayus. It was despicable. Well, who had they tapped for the executive director of MoveOn.org? This guy, Zach Exley. I've never heard of him before. Do you know who he is? Well, he previously had trained activists for the anarchist group, the Ruckus Society. These are the riots in Seattle, helped orchestrate by this guy. More on that in just a minute. Oh, by the way, he's also a blogger for the Huffington Post, which is interesting because the Huffington Post gets money from George Soros. Oh, and he's also a fellow with the George Soros Open Society Institute. Violent radicals. Oh, and by the way, it's just not that phrase that came. George Soros has been following him as he originally funded the Ella Baker Society, or the Center for Human Rights. And then, of course, he was on the Apollo Alliance. And then when he got fired from the White House, he went to Center for American Progress, which is also funded by George Soros. Radicals. Radicals. Oh, the Open Society Institute, in case you don't know what this is, don't worry, you will in the next couple of days. The Open Society Institute is George Soros' most important group. It is really spectacular. It is his philanthropy arm. This is where he looks for Mother Teresa to give out his money. And boy, did he find Mother Teresa. Well, not exactly. He found, to head this organization, the founder of the violent activist group SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. You don't know what they did in the 60s? You will. One string. $425 million every single year. The strings that are being pulled by the puppet master. Hello, America. There are a few working parts to a puppet show. There is the puppet master. Here, there's the stage, there's the audience, there are the strings to each puppet, and then there's the story. But there's also why. Why is the story? Why is the show happening? What is the puppet master? What is his motivation? Is it for the money? Is it for entertainment? Is it personal gain? What is it? Make no mistake, we are watching a show. The stage is the world. It's television, it's newspaper, it's speeches, it's the political elections, it's what's happening in Washington. You are the audience. And like any good show, they do have one goal in mind. They want you to feel something. But most shows don't have a hidden meaning behind it. They just want you to laugh. They want you to be entertained. This one, not so much. At the end of the show, you have a choice to make. They want you to get up from your seats. Of course, they have in mind what they are planning on you choosing, and they are just using this stage to try to make the case and convince you of it. It's really propaganda. Here's the propaganda book. Here it is. This is actually from one of Wilson's. Nasty, nasty guys. This is the book that I've told you before on propaganda that Hitler used. Goebbels. I just want to show you in propaganda, this is D. Now this is what's taught in schools. D. Democracy is administered by the intelligent minority who know how to regiment and guide the masses. That's great. This is Edward Bernays. Let me give you the whole quote here. He says, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, maybe almost a shadow government, remember that, which is the true ruling power of our country. Do we have a shadow government? Answer it now, remember how you answer it, and then answer it again after today's show and tomorrow's show. The question is, do we have a shadow government? And if we do, who are those intelligent minority that is guiding us through? And where are they guiding us to? If you skip past all of the puppets and the strings, if you stop looking at the puppets themselves, you have to see who's behind the puppets. Who is choosing the puppets and the players? Who's the puppet master? George Soros. Now, I am sure that this will be called a conspiracy theory, and quite honestly, a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it myself. But it is right out in the open. I encourage you, do not take my word for this. Do your own research, and don't go to conspiracy websites or anything else. Go to his own books. Go to the biographies written about him. Go to things that are well documented, like 60 Minutes, things that are well known for their accuracy. We have all of the materials that put this show together at glennbeck.com and in my free email newsletter. I want you to see the footnotes on this program. Do not take anything I say as gospel tonight. I want you to decide for yourself. I want you to question with boldness. Is George Soros a man who says, yes, you will be perfect and you will be perfect? Is he really a puppet master? And if he is, how does he control? How does he control? Well, let's start with this. Let's just take a couple of examples here on what George Soros has said and then see if there's any connection to anything. Soros spoke at Columbia University. He talked about an urgent need for campaign finance reform. I want you to remember, questioning our elections is important to George Soros. You'll understand in about 20 minutes. Well, he wanted to have campaign finance reform. He thought it was important. He spoke at Columbia University about it. Well, Open Society, his little group, Open Society, started by the guy with SDS, it was one of only a handful of groups who spent $123 million to push finance reform. Soros, quote, said, do something about the distortion of our electoral process by the excessive use of TV advertising. So he wanted to make sure that lies couldn't distort things. Well, it wasn't long after that speech at Columbia University that, lo and behold, Senator Russ Feingold, a progressive, and a few months later, with John McCain, a Republican progressive, came with a proposal in hand for what would eventually become the McCain-Feingold Act. The irony, if it is that McCain-Feingold ultimately led to the explosion of 501c3 groups, which can advertise at will. 501c3 groups. Oh, 501c3 groups? You mean like Sojourners, or Color for Change, or the Tides Foundation, or Media Matters, or People for the American Way, or MoveOn.org, Center for American Progress, the Apollo Alliance, Elder Saker for Human Rights. You mean those things? You see, we had the McCain-Feingold Act, and then mysteriously, almost unbeknownst to everyone, those groups became very powerful, much more powerful. And guess who controls most of the most powerful? George Soros. George Soros, in the aftermath of 9/11, talked about police action as an alternative to war. Now, did anybody pick up on that? This is what he said. War is a false and misleading metaphor in the context of combating terrorism. Crimes require police work, not military action. George Soros. Here he is, the Democratic candidate for president, adopting crimes require police work, not military action positions.
What we've learned is that the war on terror is much more of an intelligence operation and a law enforcement operation.
The war on terror is far less of a military operation and far more of an intelligence-gathering law enforcement operation.
And that's what we have now in our office. Starts with George Soros. Days after President Obama was elected, George Soros again set the agenda. He said, quote, I think we need a large stimulus package which will provide funds for state and local government to maintain their budgets because they are not allowed by the Constitution to run a deficit. For such a program to be successful, the federal government would need to provide hundreds of billions of dollars. In addition, another infrastructure program is necessary. In total, the cost would be between $300 and $600 billion range. Well, what was on Obama's, the first thing on his agenda? The $787 billion stimulus bill. Gee, I remember this, and I remember saying at the time, who wrote this? It was too complex. It was too early in his, oh yeah, that's right, the Apollo Alliance. Where does the Apollo Alliance come from? The Tides Foundation. And where does the Tides Foundation get a lot of their funding? George Soros. Soros also heavily promotes green jobs and cap and trade. Also, days after Obama was elected, he called for a new energy bill. I think this is a great opportunity to financially deal with global warming and energy independence. The U.S. needs a cap and trade system with the auctioning of license for emissions rights. I would use the revenues from these auctions to launch a new environmentally friendly energy policy that would be yet another federal program that could help us overcome the current stagnation. Well, Congress introduced, but you stood up. You said, I don't think so. The audience started to revolt. Cap and trade failed. Now, through Freedom of Information Act, we find out that the Department of Energy and the EPA actually coordinated their response to damning reports on green jobs from Spain with the help of George Soros and his Center for American Progress, which gets their funding from here, George Soros. Here it is, December 9th, 2004. Also, there was this piece of information. This guy, where is Eli? Eli Pariser. There he is. He headed the Soros group, the front group, MoveOn.pac. Now, he wasn't upset that Kerry lost. Why? He explained this in an email. This is important that you understand. Quote, in the last year, grassroots contributors like us gave more than $300 million to the Kerry campaign and the DNC and proved that the party doesn't need corporate cash to be competitive. It's now our party. We bought it, we own it, and we're going to take it back. Do you understand what just happened? George Soros got rid of all of the corporate money through McCain-Feingold, which then allowed all the 501c3s to come in. This one might help, and this one might help, and this one might help. And all the 501c3s now make the party lift their hands. The money is the string. They control everything. They tell the party what to do. You've been watching a show. You think the Democrats are still Democrats? They're not. They're not. I want you to understand there are two kinds of puppets here. The first puppet is the puppet organizations. You know, I don't know. This is the Musicians Union, and maybe this is SCIU, and the AFL-CIO, and ACORN. Their job on stage is to create an illusion of a big, dramatic movement that is happening. A grassroots. You know how Nancy Pelosi is always saying, oh, that's a grassroots, and that's AstroTurf, right? They're doing something on the stage, and they're getting you to believe something. But it's all part of the show. The second kind of puppet is an individual puppet. It could be John Kerry. It could be Van Jones. Could be Andy Stern, Richard Trumka, perhaps President Obama. Have you ever wondered who's at the other end of a BlackBerry? No president has ever had that. That was a security risk. Why did we spend so much money? Who does he need to talk to? Who does he need to see texts from? Who's writing the damn speeches and the teleprompter everywhere? There are also two storylines. If you would come to a show, there's always two storylines, and you'll see it in different movies about stages and stage performers. Even Moulin Rouge is just a favorite movie of my family. Two stories. There is what's happening on stage, and then there's the one behind the stage. You don't ever see what's happening behind. But the story that they're telling on stage and they're acting out, you know. Oh, the government needs to spend more money to stimulate the economy. No, we need more government intervention. Those evil rich people won't spend their money. We need more taxes, all of that. You know this storyline. But how much of it is real? How much of it is orchestrated? Well, there's only one way to find out that answer. And that is you have to look behind the curtain. On this program over the years, we have shown you the people who are taking our country apart piece by piece. And we've shown it to you in their own words. Well, we didn't expect to find many of the things that they've said, because many times they've said these things and they thought they were behind the curtain. They didn't expect you to see these words from even the President of the United States.
I happen to be a proponent of a single-payer universal health care plan. A single-payer health care plan, universal health care plan. That's what I'd like to see.
He's at AFL-CIO. That wasn't part of the storyline. It wasn't supposed to be revealed. That was behind the curtain. He was talking to the AFL-CIO. Behind the scenes. Over the next couple of nights, we'll do our best to give you a complete tour of the show. The puppets, the money strings, the storylines, behind the stage, everything. Not just the parts they want you to see. And again, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to read all of this yourself. All of the links and information and additional reading material will be available at glennbeck.com. Also in my free email newsletter, you can sign up for it there. Also, we have put it on theblaze.com. There are news stories about George Soros today, and also amazing stories about violence from MSNBC. We have a commentator last night saying that we wonder if there should be a revolution. Of course, he's saying now, of course the answer is yes, and maybe even a violent revolution. It's amazing what you are missing when you don't know what you're looking for. This isn't a conspiracy. That was on MSNBC. It's all out in the open. I believe you take a man at his word, and George Soros has publicly dedicated his life to this. He has even said he's willing to die for what he believes in. Here he is.
In the things that I am engaged in, I'm actually willing to put my life at risk, and I think it makes me feel much more complete.
Well, you complete me, George. I'm willing to put my life at stake, and so are many people in America. It's what you believe in. But what is it that he believes in? He has tens of billions of dollars all flowing in, pulling strings. His tentacles are everywhere. What is he going through all of this trouble for to achieve? Well, globalization. George Soros believes, quote, the main obstacle of a stable and just world order is the United States. Let that sink in for a minute. The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States. We'll pick it up next there.
I am particularly interested in changes in the rules of the game.
80 years ago, George Soros was born. Little did the world know then, economies would collapse. Currencies would become worthless. Elections would be stolen. Regimes would fall. And one billionaire would find himself coincidentally at the center of it all. He was born in Budapest, Hungary on August 12, 1930, as George Schwartz, the son of Orthodox Jews. Today, Soros is an atheist who doesn't embrace his Jewish identity and rarely supports Jewish causes or Israel.
I've not been very engaged in Israel.
Why not?
I think there are enough Jews to take care of Israel.
In 1947, the Soros family relocated from Hungary to England, where George attended the Fabian Socialist London School of Economics. He moved to New York in 1956, became a U.S. citizen in 61, and at the age of 39, he started what would become the Quantum Fund, which he would use to attack currencies all across the globe. He later would be blamed for the financial collapses in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and Russia. And who could forget that he was the man who broke the Bank of England in 1992, shorting the British sterling by betting heavily that the currency would collapse despite government assurances to the contrary.
Today has been an extremely difficult and turbulent day. Massive speculative flows continue to disrupt the functioning exchange rate mechanism.
The money that I made on this particular transaction, the estimate is about $1 billion.
Along with currencies, Soros also collapses regimes. With his Open Society Fund, which was founded in 1979, Soros has helped fund the Velvet Revolution in the Czech Republic, the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine, the Rose Revolution in Georgia. He also helped engineer coups in Slovakia, Croatia, and Yugoslavia. So what is his target now? Us. America.
He said it himself on many occasions. He said, what I have done in other countries in terms of overturning bad governments, I'm going to do in this country.
Our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts.
Political analysts say the shadow party he has built here greatly resembles those he created in other countries before instigating a coup.
He created his own party within a party, or his shadow party outside of the Democratic Party, the Center for American Progress. That was one of the original shadow party groups. This group, from the beginning, was charged with getting control of the conservative media. Many of the people in the Obama administration were just drawn right up from there.
He spent millions in 2004 to drive President Bush out of office. He didn't succeed. But changing the attitude and policies of America, he says, remains his top priority. In one of his books, Soros writes, quote, "The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States," end quote. You wouldn't want a man like this anywhere near the President of the United States, would you? Soros has been granted at least 4 visits so far to the Obama White House. This, a man who has repeatedly called for the devaluation of the dollar.
A slow decline in the value of the dollar, a managed decline.
He's waged a war against capitalism.
Capitalism is not directly opposed to open society. Nevertheless, it poses some serious threats.
This is a man who wants the world to be one global society without borders or individual governments. One global society and one global gatekeeper.
We are trying to describe a very complex problem in a very short period of time. It may take us 3 days to do this. I ask you that you would videotape or DVD every episode this week. I have been warning about a structure that progressives have worked to put into place. The health care bill, cap and trade, the stimulus bill, thousands and thousands of pages that nobody has seemed to have read. We exposed this structure layer by layer until we finally got to the same guy over and over again, George Soros. Now, I just showed you how he collapsed regimes internationally, and now he's aiming at America. Soros has been calling for globalization for decades, saying, quote, "To stabilize and regulate a truly global economy, we need some global system of political decision-making. In short, we need a global society to support our global economy." Interestingly, the greatest opposition to this idea is coming from the United States. With the right sense of leadership and with a clarity of purpose, the U.S. and its allies could help stabilize the global economic system. The opportunity is waiting to be grasped. So he knows better. You just don't understand. Do you see the arrogance? Soros's goal for achieving globalization is done through organizations, puppet organizations, and he remains in the shadow. He's able to pull the strings because he's the money that animates each of these puppets. According to Shadow Party author Richard Poe, he wrote, "Through his global web of open society institutes and open society foundations, Soros has spent 25 years recruiting, training, indoctrinating, and installing a network of loyal operatives in 50 countries, placing them in positions of influence and in power in media, government, finance, and academia." Does any of this sound familiar? This formula of infiltrating the system is always the same with Soros. It's the one he always uses. So I'm not asking you to believe me on conjecture. I'm asking you to learn the history of George Soros. His method is to create a shadow party, form a shadow government every time, and then you'll be one step closer to one world government and taking power. A shadow party is not a political party. It is a Not, at least not in a tangible sense. It works outside the normal electoral system. In 2000, Soros funded 1/3 of the shadow conventions. Do you even remember these? They were run by Arianna Huffington, the president's favorite source of news. And one of the lead organizers next to her was Jim Wallace, one of the guys who is campaigning against this program, surprise, surprise. The idea was to parallel the Democratic and Republican conventions, the shadow convention. Huffington said at the time, the message of the shadow conventions was, quote, not left or right, and the answers to these issues are not going to be found in the old ideas of the past. Clearly, the Great Society solution of top-down programs has failed. Top-down programs. Instead, the answers could be found in the raw power, quoting, of government appropriations. Wow. But it was the next election cycle that truly launched the shadow party. In 2004, when Soros didn't mince words, he stated, quote, this is not a normal election. These are not normal times. And, quote, I do not accept the rules imposed by others. If I did, I would not be alive today. And in periods of regime change, normal rules do not apply. One needs to adjust one's behavior to the changing circumstances. By the 2004 election cycle, Soros's shadow party had shaped the Democratic message. Under Soros, the guidance of the shadow party infrastructure had assumed the coherent shape by early 2004. There were 7 extensively independent nonprofit groups, which included MoveOn.org, that would help the Democrats. Really. Soros surrounds himself by radicals and revolutionaries. Let me go back to what I told you at the beginning. George Soros is creating a new structure through a shadow party. He infiltrates politics. He pulls the same playbook out every single time. Ukraine, Croatia, Yugoslavia, Georgia, and Slovakia. The same thing. Here it is, step by step. Step 1, you form a shadow government. He's done that. Infiltrate the target country using humanitarian aid, Open Society Institute, or ACORN, whatever they are, as cover. Step 2, you control the airwaves. Has he done that? Fund existing radio and television outlets, or start your own outlets. We showed you this chalkboard yesterday. This is his media empire. NPR, free press. It's all here. Step 3, you destabilize the state. Would you make a case that this is being done? You cause a political or economic crisis, or you take advantage of an existing crisis. Step 4, provoke an election crisis, where you don't want to really trust the outcome of an election. You wait for an election, and then you cry voter fraud. This, by the way, La Raza and Acorn funded through OSI, George Soros' charity arm. Step 5, stage massive demonstrations, and you accuse opponents of voter fraud through radio and TV stations that you control. Soros has been laying the groundwork for change for the U.S. for decades, going through many of these steps one at a time, sometimes combined. Step 1, Soros has established his Open Society Institute in the U.S. Step 2, he's been trying to control the airwaves by funding media outlets and attacking Fox News, and they're doing it now with millions of dollars on this program and Fox. Step 3, Soros supports massive government spending, which will worsen our deficit crisis, destabilize the state. This is a man who lives above the law. This is a man who is not exactly humble. In fact, he fancies himself somewhat of a god. In his own words, next. What would possess a man to need as much power as George Soros does? Well, the title of a biography that he himself authorized refers to him as a messianic billionaire. Wow, that's quite a claim. But maybe you should look into the mind of the puppet master and see what's inside.
The United States should find its proper place in a new world order. They would have to give up some of their privileges.
He's been trying to reorder the world as if he is the creator. Soros has admitted in the past he doesn't believe in God. But that's perhaps because he thinks he is.
Soros himself admits that from the time he was very young, he had megalomaniacal ideas. He said he had messianic fantasies. He said he even thought of himself as a kind of god.
In Underwriting Democracy, he writes, quote, "If truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood. In The Alchemy of Finance, quote, I fancied myself as some kind of god."
He's even said that now that I've made these things, these dreams into a reality, I feel more comfortable admitting to the magnitude of my, my ambitions.
In Soros on Soros, quote, "I probably couldn't feel all of a piece if I weren't larger than life." To the New Yorker, God in the Old Testament has a number of attributes. Invisible. I was pretty invisible. Benevolent. I was pretty benevolent. All-seeing. I tried to be all-seeing. End quote.
Soros goes further in that he has said that he wants to be the conscience of the world. He was quoted by his biographer, Kaufman.
Yes, I did say that, and actually I stand by it. I think the world very much needs a conscience. I want my foundation network to be the conscience of the world.
We're almost out of time, but there is so much more in the next 2 broadcasts. Make sure you DVR this program and share it with as many friends as you can. There is a personal story in this that we need to share with you. A little over a month ago, George Soros, his right-hand man, reached out to one of the vice presidents, one of the executives on this television program. He requested a meeting in public between the two of them. The executive accepted Mr. Soros's invitation. The meeting began with the Soros guy saying that this program, and me in particular, was corroding the very foundation of America and instigating violence to boot. And that was just while they were waiting to be seated at the restaurant. When that wild opening salvo failed to prompt anything more than a calm rebuttal from my executive, the Soros executive then shifted gears, explaining that we were hurting their business, even hurting Mr. Soros himself. Then he went on to talk about a vast right-wing conspiracy headed by this show or Fox News, targeting his boss because of his support for the Democratic candidates or maybe his position on legalizing drugs. I have no idea. But after my guy calmly rebutted the notion of any conspiracy, his guy, apparently out of bullets, said, "Then why? Why focus on George Soros if it's not that?" My executive explained to him that whenever you do a Google search on failing economies or collapsed currencies, the name George Soros keeps popping up, usually at number 1. And because he steadfastly believes in one world government at the expense of the United States of America. I do not. The Soros guy dismissed his boss's role in collapsing the currencies, like the British sterling. He said it was overhyped, claiming they really didn't make that much off it, as people say. As far as one world government or globalization, well, he explained that ship, quoting, had already sailed. And he suggested that if Glenn Beck doesn't recognize that, he'll just be left behind. He then looked at my executive and said, "I don't think you hear me. I don't think you understand. Glenn Beck is hurting Mr. Soros and his business." At this point, the Soros executive abruptly ended the meeting, but not before saying that he had a gift from Mr. Soros for me, something he wanted my executive to give to me. He reached into his briefcase and handed him this. It's a movie, a DVD, a 1957 movie, made by a communist, by the way, how appropriate, called A Face in the Crowd, starring Andy Griffith. I watched this when MSNBC started this rumor about 2 years ago that this is who I was. It was handed to him. He wanted to make sure that it was very clear that the story accurately represented of who they thought and who Mr. Soros thought I was personally. He said, "Make sure you share it with Mr. Beck." In case you're not familiar, Andy Griffith plays a drunk, a petty criminal who, with the help of radio reporter played by Marcia Neal, transforms himself into a famous national talk show host, a man of influence with the masses and politically powerful, but he is a very bad guy. Towards the end of the movie, the character, Larry Lonesome Rhodes, is revealed to be a fraud, a liar, and the movie ends with him all alone, screaming insanely from the balcony of his Manhattan high-rise. Marcia Neal's character is afraid he's going to jump. Mr. Soros, I'm not going to jump. I'm also not Lonesome Rhodes, but I appreciate your thinking of me. Let me say again what I've repeated on this program several times. All of this can go away tomorrow, but as long as I have breath, I will use that breath to speak about what I truly believe is the truth. As I have done several times on this broadcast and in that private public meeting with a partner of George Soros. Mr. Soros, you're welcome on this program to spend an hour with me. I'm sorry to hear that you repeatedly turn it down. Last night, almost 3 million people watched this broadcast to find out about George Soros. Last night, we introduced you to the puppet master, billionaire, financier George Soros, notorious for collapsing economies and regimes all around the world. He's known as the man who broke the Bank of England. The Prime Minister of Malaysia called Soros an unscrupulous profiteer. In Thailand, he was branded the economic war criminal. They also said that he sucks the blood from people. In 1994, George Soros stated, quote, "Just right that the former Soviet Empire is now called the Soros Empire." Combine these credits with his power, along with his financial fortune, it is no wonder that he fancies himself some sort of god. That's not something that we have said. That is something that he claims. He has described himself over and over again as some sort of god, even as the conscience of the world.
Yes, I did say that, and actually I stand by it. I think the world very much needs a conscience. I want my foundation network to be the conscience of the world.
Okay, he wants it to be the conscience of the world. Well, he's a very, very generous man. Most people in the world know him as a philanthropist, huge charity guy. Well, we'll look into that charity tonight. He gets a kick out of playing God. It's actually amusing to him. He says, in his own words, it's a game. Unfortunately, what Mr. Soros forgets is these are real people. This is not some game. Real lives are being destroyed for his financial gain and for his power. I'm called a hate monger because I have conservative views and positions like, I don't know, let people keep their money. But let me tell you this, it takes a cold, cold heart to have full knowledge that what you are doing to make a buck is literally destroying the lives of people. And now he's messing with your life. He says, in his own words, America is his next target.
I became concerned with the problems of globalization, where you have global markets, but you have politics based on the sovereignty of states. So how do you deal with that issue? And then I came to the realization that open society is endangered by our current leadership in this country. And that is when I refocused my attention on the United States.
He has focused his attention. This isn't a hypothesis. This has been proven. This is what this man does. He has done it before. And now he wants an orderly decline of the dollar. His words, not mine. If you thought $5 or $4 a gallon gas is painful, wait until Soros devalues your dollar even more. Forget about driving. How about eating? We've told you just recently, I've told you this for, 2 years now, that they would devalue the dollar and that inflation would come. Financial Times reported it today. It's about to be added to your grocery bill, and if you're the one in the household doing the grocery shopping, you've already seen it, but oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. As they devalue our dollar, an orderly decline. You'll start to see prices like one group, inflation group, predicted that it will soon cost $11.43 for an ear of corn, 1 ear. How about going to the grocery store and seeing a price tag on a loaf of wheat bread of $23.05. This sugar, this size, 32 ounces of sugar, $62.21. For the milk, good old soy milk, I mean, who doesn't? Smooth and delicious, $24.31 for this size. For a container of this coffee, Folgers, 11.5 ounces, $77.71. for a container of orange juice, not this size, but for 64 fluid ounces, Minute Maid orange juice, they are now saying it will be $45.71. And one thing that I couldn't believe, and we called the experts and asked them, okay, please tell me that this Institute on Inflation is nuts. No, they're not, unfortunately. I couldn't believe that one candy bar, one Hershey's milk chocolate candy bar, 1.5 ounces Hershey's milk chocolate, $15.50. This, Mr. Soros, is not a game. At least not for the schlubs outside of your world. I don't know anybody inside the world of George Soros. Well, you've got Timothy Geithner, you have Ben Bernanke, you have most of the politicians in Washington. We're the ones who are going to risk in this game. When he manages the decline of our dollar, him and his minions in Washington, who do you think pays the price? Will it be him or will it be you? You see, he knows what's coming. And because of that, he can hedge. He knows exactly where to go. He knows where the exits are. And he's done it over and over again. He will gain profit and power, and you will lose both. He's playing God, which is fine by him, because he's an atheist. So there has to be a God who's going to fill that void. Well, he's smart enough to do it. In one transcript, he said that he was benevolent just like God. He sees the future just like God. So what does God's Bible preach? Globalization.
Open society is a desirable form of social organization, both as a means to an end and as an end in itself.
Okay. That's, by the way, the replacement of the republic in open society. This is not a leap of faith. I'm stating this as fact. And as I told you last night at glennbeck.com and on theblaze.com, you will find all of these facts, all of the research. Do not take my word for it. Not one bit on this show. Do not take my word for it. Read about it yourself. Most of it comes in the form of his own words. Come on over here for a second. These are, many of these are the books that we use to prepare this show. And many of these books are written by him. This one, this one, this one. You can read about it. He's not shy about telling you. I mean, God wrote a book too. He wrote 3. Because of his own words, we know what to look for. We know the signs. We know what he's done in the past to bring down regimes. He's left a blueprint, a pattern to look for. And now that Soros is saying that he has turned his focus and set his sights on America, don't you think we should look at his past and see how he's done it before? What are the footprints? Where is he leaving fingerprints? How did he do it? 4 or 5 times before. Well, we also should look at what has he accomplished so far. How far down that line is he? Tonight, we look at the puppet master's latest work of art, America Under Siege. All right, George Soros has his sights on America. So how does he view us? Well, it's easy. He views us like this. America is the main obstacle to a stable and just world order. The United States. His words, not mine. So not only does he want to bring America to her knees financially, he wants to reap obscene profits off us as well. Like when he made $1 billion off the collapse of the British sterling. His claim, not mine.
The money that I made on this particular transaction, the estimate is about $1 billion.
You were the guy they said who broke the Bank of England.
Right, and
did.
Well, that's true.
He's just a lovable old spooky dude. By the way, his people, when they met with my number 2 in a story that I told you last night, and remember, left us this threat, I mean this gift, he says they didn't really make that much off it. So is he lying then or is he lying now? Which is it? This man causes misery in his wake. People's lives were ruined. Retirement accounts, savings, jobs, all gone. Grandma and Grandpa saved their whole life. Gone. And he just walks away. You've saved your whole life. If you've put all your money away for retirement, It's now worth 30% less in the last 10 years. And it's about to be worth a lot less. What are you going to do? You're going to go back and get another job? See, he doesn't think about that stuff because your life is a game to this man. And again, listen to George Soros in his own words.
When you try to, let's say, improve society, you affect different people and different interests differently, and they are not actually commensurate. So you very often have all kinds of unintended adverse consequences. So I had to experiment, and it was a learning process. The first part was this subversive activity, disrupting repressive regimes. That was a lot of fun, and that's actually what got me hooked on this whole enterprise.
That was a lot of fun, experimenting with people's lives. This is what happens when people put themselves in an elite category or appoint themselves rulers, or in his case, see themselves as some sort of a god. You become a plaything, and he is the all-knowing, all-seeing creator. He has been playing this game for a very long time. But before I show you how he's playing it now and what is coming, I want to start in Czechoslovakia. Half a century ago in Czechoslovakia. It was a scary, scary time to live in this part of the world. The world was changing. Europe was on fire, joblessness, hunger. Hunger was on the rise. People didn't know what to do. Protesters started rioting in the streets. The average person was frightened out of their mind. And so what did they do? They begged the government, please bring order. Stop the people rioting in the streets. Well, they did. And the next thing the average person knew, they were a communist country. It is important to remember this story because that's what history books would tell you. But there's now new documents out that were never supposed to be released. And it plays directly into today and what's happening in America. And we'll get to that by the bottom of the hour. But right now I want to show you the signs. What is George Soros trying to do? What is it? How does he do it? After country after country after country, we found that there are 5 steps to him gaining control. He does it over and over and over again. So let's see what the steps are, and let's see if he's done any of them here. The first one is form a shadow government using a humanitarian aid as cover. This is what he just said. It's kind of funny. It's kind of fun. The first step, he said, is subversive activities. Okay? Step 2, control the airwaves. Fund existing radio and TV outlets and take control over them or start your own outlets. Remember, take control of existing or start your own. Step 3, destabilize the state. Weaken the government and build an anti-government kind of feeling in the country. You exploit an economic crisis or take advantage of an existing crisis. Pressure from the top and the bottom. This will allow you to weaken the government and build anti-government public sentiment. Step 4, you provoke an election crisis. You wait for an election. And during the election, you cry voter fraud. Step 5, take power. You stage massive demonstrations, civil disobedience, sit-ins, general strikes. You encourage activism. You promote voter fraud, tell followers what to do through your radio and television stations. Well, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Do any of those sound familiar? This is the way George Soros takes country down every time. Every time. Again, he's done it. How many times, Joe? 4 or 5? 4 times. 4 times before. We'll be number 5. So let's go back here. The 5 steps to control. The first one is form a shadow government using humanitarian aid as a cover. Now, is he doing this? Well, let me start with the central George Soros operation, which is OSI. This is his main group. OSI. It is the Open Society Institute. It sounds warm and fuzzy, and to hear the way they tell it, it is warm and fuzzy. Oddly enough, yesterday, in a sign of, I think, total panic and collapse, OSI released a video talking all about all the wonderful things that George Soros does. It's fantastic. Must have cost them a fortune to put this up. Coincidentally, it's released the day that we do our special to show you that he's just a lovable old philanthropist. That's all he does. He cares about people. Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. Because he's a humanitarian. He's a philanthropist, you know. He gives tons of money. I'll show you that whole thing at the end of the show. Through the Open Society Foundation, he donates almost $500 million annually to charity causes all around the globe. Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love people who give a lot of money to charity. I think that's fantastic. I do. Now, when you look at a charity, this is what I learned when I started to try to be responsible with my money. You look at people as an investment. What's the best way to invest in people? But you need, if you're going to give away $500 million every single year, you better have somebody who really knows how to manage it. And you better have somebody who has a big, big heart. Who is the person to head up your charitable arm, Mr. Soros? Well, he found, he just found he's just the founder of SDS, the radical student group from the 1960s. You remember. You remember the days of rage, riots? Yeah. Yeah. And the spin-off group, the Weather Underground? Yeah. Just the guy who started this stuff, that's who heads the charitable arm. It's almost like subversive activities are kind of fun to Mr. Soros under the cover of humanitarian aid. So OSI spreads the money all over the country. But I'm sure the head of OSI, he's probably changed. One of the things that OSI funded was the shadow conventions in 2000. It funneled 1/3 of the shadow convention, who was hosted here. I mean, unless you were an avid, C-SPAN watcher, probably don't remember them. But it was an attempt to, as they put it, focus on the issues that the parties just won't touch. Issues like campaign finance reform. Wait a minute. Last night, campaign finance reform. Now, that's a good humanitarian thing, isn't it? Seriously, that's going to feed a lot of children. Campaign finance reform. Remember we said that he spent over $100 million to get campaign finance reform. And what happened? Oh, yeah, I remember. It led to the boom in 501c3s, like MoveOn.org or Media Matters or any of the other things that he seems to fund. They can take in as much money as they want. And now, all of those political organizations are controlled by George Soros. But remember, it's humanitarian. One of the organizers of the Shadow Convention was Arianna Huffington, which is now getting the Huffington Post money from George Soros to be able to hire reporters. Isn't that great? She was introducing here in 2000 at the Shadow Convention. She was introducing somebody else, another guest speaker, another co-organizer of the event. Watch.
We're now moving to the second issue of the Shadow Convention, the persistence of poverty in the middle of our prosperity. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome one of our conveners, the Reverend Jim Wallis, the head of the Court Renewal, a new coalition of churches to fight poverty, and the editor of Sojourners magazine. Oh. He's also been a mentor and an inspiration to me. So get ready to be inspired. Jim Wallis.
Praise Jesus. Jim Wallis. Sojourners. Faith, politics, culture. That's right. Sojourners. Didn't he get a bunch of money recently to help boycott me? That's right. I remember him now. And Sojourners, another group funded by OSI. George Soros, an atheist, dumping a whole bunch of money into a Christian organization. Well, that almost doesn't make sense. Oh, but it's humanitarian. Kind of makes you question the motives, though, doesn't it? Of course, it doesn't take long to see that his attraction to Jim Wallis is because he's a big government progressive. The solution is not with the people in the churches. It is get everybody into the government. He's infiltrating the churches. You see how this works? I know. I'm sorry, Mr. Soros. It's just humanitarian aid. Step number 2 is to control the airwaves. Has George Soros done this at all? Well, Open Society, it's very innocent here. And it's pure as the driven snow. Recently donated $1.8 million so that NPR could hire new journalists. Do we have the NPR thing? They just $1.8 million so they could hire 100 journalists. And then Soros wrote a $100 million check to Media Matters to go along with, $1 million to go along with NPR, which was great. Their stated goal, by the way, what got him to write that was they were going to get me off the air and then destroy Fox. Isn't that great? By the way, he gave that $1 million and all that money after we were threatened. I mean, we were given a gift by Mr. Soros, and they realized that I wouldn't shut up. I wouldn't stop. And so then he decided, well, I guess I'm going to have to destroy him another way. $1 million also to the teapartytracker.org, teapartytracker.org. This is a website that they developed with the NAACP's media staff. It's supposed to expose the intolerant element of the Tea Party. Then the NAACP takes its content and collaborates with Think Progress, another Soros-funded group, along with Media Matters, and there you go. The next 3 steps? Next. We're talking about the plan for control that George Soros uses to take control of governments. The first one was form a shadow government using humanitarian aid as a cover. In George Soros's words, subversive activities. By the way, here's Sojourners. Here's a letter a friend of mine gave me today. This is me on the cover. Glenn Beck doesn't like us. We must be doing something right. It's a fundraising letter for this guy. Number 2, control the airwaves. Is he doing that? Yes. Number 3, destabilize the state and weaken the government and build an anti-government sentiment. Okay, so is he doing this? Well, again, we go back to his organization, his humanitarian organization, heavily funds the Tides Foundation. The Tides Foundation, $4.2 million. They're the ones that funded the anti-capitalist story of stuff indoctrination videos that we have told you that helps kids resent the government that supports a free market system. Tides itself takes some of its money and then sends it on to places like the Apollo Alliance, the home of Van Jones. They're the ones that also crafted the stimulus bill, you know, for the little guy, like Andy Stern. I think we all know how everyone feels about the stimulus bill. Also, OSI decides that they're going to fund a place called the Center for American Progress. You know that one. That's a progressive think tank that churn out big government ideas and who get many of their ideas from another group OSI funds, the IPS. This is the Institute for Policy Studies. You know what they've just come out with? This is great. They've just come out with a couple of things. First, President Obama needs to bypass Congress and issue more executive orders now that the election is over. And they've come out with this exciting new report that says, quote, outside pressure, inside strategy. Wow, that sounds familiar. Inside strategy, outside pressure. It's almost like bottom up, top down. What am I remembering here? Oh yeah, I remember Czechoslovakia. Top to bottom, bottom to top, inside out. Remind me of that, along with George Soros and Van Jones in just a few minutes. I'll show you something that will blow your mind. Step 4. Step 4 is provoke an election crisis. Well, that, of course, they haven't done anything like that, you know, where you lose confidence in the vote. No, 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 of course not. Of course, you have OSI funding Acorn. This is a group that's willing to sell, you know, human sex slave traffickers and give them a tax break. Soros also created this, SOS, the Secretary of State Project. This is a group that is specifically designed to groom and elect Secretary of States around the nation because they're the ones who have to certify election results. How do you think, what's his name from Minnesota got in last time? Remember all that? Remember Al Franken is, yeah, who's this project? Isn't that weird? They're the ones that call the shots. And Soros has pumped millions of dollars into voting-related groups, some of them legitimate, some get caught doing illegal things, some are kind of a little shady. I like this one myself, One America Votes. They get money from the Tides. Remember, Soros funds that group. They sent illegal immigrants door to door in Washington State just before this last election to tell people that they were illegal, but you should get out and vote. There's George Soros for you. And then step number 5, take power. Take power. This one is kind of hand in hand with stage demonstrations. This one's about to come. We've already seen the beginnings of it. The One Nation rally. We saw this. This is the labor union rally in D.C. as a response to 828, a project of the Tides Center, a.k.a. George Soros Group. OSI also donated to the Ruckus Society. They're a radical environmental justice group known for their aggressive tactics. Remember, that was the guy I told you about last night? It was causing all the riots in Seattle. Then OSI has donated to several groups who are trying to get me off the air. You have Faith in Public Life. That's funded by OSI. They're calling for my head. You have Sojourners, of course. They're calling for my head. You have Media Matters, all of them out of the pocket of George Soros. Mark my words, and I believe I said that for the last 2 years on inflation. As I told you, massive inflation will come, and you're beginning to see it now. Staged demonstrations and riots in the streets, you will see them here. What you're seeing today in the UK, this is students demonstrating in the streets. That's a demonstration, by the way. They will come here too. Because what are they rioting about? That they are cutting services at schools and raising tuitions. Really? Well, they will come, and they will be orchestrated, funded, or they will be exploited by Soros-like groups. If you're watching this show, and George Soros is the puppet master, so I'm sure he's having somebody else watch it, what happens? What happens to all of these groups? What happens to all of these groups? This man is playing God. He thinks he's God. God created the earth in 6 days and then rested on the 7th. Well, George Soros has created all of these things. And believe me, it's not just, in fact, here. Do you have this? Yeah, come here, Aaron. Come here. You stand over here. Stand. Lovely and talented Aaron. These are the Open Society. These are just the things that he has donated to. I just want to show you, because we don't have a lot of time. So I just wanted to show you the list. These are the list of the organizations that are involved, you know, in these 5 steps. And we wrote it out for you. But I just wanted to show you that it's no big deal. It's not like you're overpowered or anything like this. There's more. This is less than half of them. But other than that, there's nothing to see here. Just move on with your lives. Nothing to see here, folks. All right, I want to show you some video that has been bothering me for a while, and I mentioned it at the top of the hour and also yesterday. I think this will tie things together. I hope it does if you've watched both episodes. First one is from Bertha Lewis. She's in front of a bunch of young socialists of America, and here's what she says.
Organize, get out into the street. You really have got to circle the wagons. This is not rhetoric or hyperbole. This is real.
She talks in here about how these Tea Partiers are going to come and get you. This is just like when they rounded up the Japanese. I mean, it's quite a stirring speech. That bothered me. That really bothered me. Because I do believe take power is the next step here. Stage demonstrations. Riots, they need trouble. But something bothered me even more. In the summer, Van Jones cloaked a message here in peace and love, and it stuck out to me. I want you to listen to what he says.
You handle the top down, but it's also bottom up and inside out. Top down, bottom up, and inside out. So now your challenge as you leave here, our challenge, is to take care of that bottom up part and that inside out part, the heart part.
The heart part. That's what did it for me. He said the heart part. I'm like, there's something wrong here. But I didn't know what this meant. This is a tried and true technique that communists use to crush people of a nation between the members of a government at the top. Remember, he said, you've taken care of the top part. What does that mean? You put the right radicals in power. You've taken care of the top part. Then they get the radicals at the bottom to cause chaos. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I tell you, don't take my word for anything. You go ahead and look it up yourself. Let me take you back to where I took you at the beginning of this program, Czechoslovakia. I only told you half the story of what the Czechoslovakians thought was happening to their country in the late 1940s. After World War II, Czechoslovakia was in real trouble and people were hungry and there was strife. And a small group of communists managed to gain power in the Czech government through parliamentary maneuvers. That was taking care of the top-down pressure. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to all the people in Czechoslovakia, they were agitating people. getting them out into the streets, riot, strike, protest, create the illusion of a widespread clamor for change. That was the bottom-up pressure on the system. Well, the people were left in between, and they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what was going on. They were hungry, they were scared, they were confused, and they were looking for help. When they cried out for help from the government, which they thought was not with the rioters, oh, they got help. They had no idea that some at the top were in league with those creating the chaos at the bottom. The people at the top had formed a shadow government, and they were only too happy to help, and they helped by clamping down on the Czech people. So the Czech people were hit from both directions, top down, bottom up, and inside out. Their country was turned inside out. They didn't know what to believe. The same is now being called for. The organizations that are calling now for Obama to bypass Congress and issue just executive orders. The Institute for Policy Studies, Soros funding. They came out with their annual report that literally says outside, inside, outside pressure and inside strategy. What does that mean? It's just a different way of saying up and down pressure. Same thing, outside, inside. Now, how do I know about this strategy in Czechoslovakia? Well, it came from Jan Kozak's Communist Strategy paper. He was a writer and a member of the Communist Party at the time. He wrote this essay, and it was never intended to go public, but it accidentally did. We found it in a very old copy of the Congressional Records. Everything I am telling you for the last 2 nights, all of this strategy, all of this, the exposure. Why do you think George Soros sent his number 2 guy to my number 2 guy to ask us to consider him a kindly old gentleman? Because what he's doing was never meant to be published. But after being bullied, we stood up. We're not playing your game. It's no accident. This is what Van Jones meant. Top down, inside out, after the bottom up. What the Czech people didn't know is what you know now, that there is an orchestration of the ground. It's all being orchestrated. You know the groups involved now, and you know who's at the top. The Czechoslovakian people didn't know that, so they ran to the people they usually trusted, but they called for the wrong people. The other thing that the Czechoslovakian people didn't know is the first lesson of the 9/12 Project. What was my goal when I introduced the 9/12 Project? To tell you, you are not alone. But here was one of the most important lines out of that, especially in retrospect. Listen to this. The truth is, they don't surround us. We surround them. This is our country. Why is that important? Because when you study what happened in Czechoslovakia, the people felt alone, and they felt surrounded. You're not alone, and they do not surround you. It's an illusion. It's a puppet show. It's a stage. The radicals need you to feel that way. They need you to riot. They need you to create chaos. They'll do it if you won't, but they'd prefer that you did it. So when Van Jones says bottom up, he means get out into the streets. Why do you think she's telling the young communists they're coming for you? Get out into the streets. It's a game. And George Soros enjoys the game. He finds it kind of fun, those subversive activities, not my words, his words. He means the government forces that are in league with the riots when Van Jones says bottom up and top down, the top will clamp down. Those are the people who are trying to force this president to do what he knows needs to be done. Van Jones' words. Top down, bottom up, inside out strategy. That's what's happening. Except now we've thrown a tire iron into their little game that they have played 4 other times, and they are now executing the 5th time. But now we're changing the game. That's why we have tried to arm you with the most powerful weapon you have, information you need. Find all of this out. Find it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Know it and tell everyone you know. George Soros, you should know one thing, sir. We are not Czech citizens. We are Americans. I want to take a minute here to show you something that was released by George Soros last night, and OSI, his charitable arm, you know, because he's a philanthropist. And to be fair to him, I want to show what they rolled out, but I want you to know one thing. This guy has collapsed 4 countries, 4 regimes, 4 currencies. He's the most powerful man on earth, 35th richest man in the world. This is Enron. What you're seeing here, this is what happens when a company is in collapse. This is a desperate cry for George Soros to turn around and look at a guy at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. This is coming undone. You spread all of the information that we have given you, and you do your own homework. You verify yourself. Go to original sources and verify yourself and spread it. Because light is the only thing this guy, he can't stand the light. He has to hide behind a mask. But watch their corporate film on, oh, don't listen to that guy at 5 o'clock. Really, I'm a good guy. Here it is.
Over the past 3 decades, George Soros, the founder and chairman of the Open Society Foundations, has spent more than $8 billion to transform the lives of the world's most oppressed and ignored people. From helping those with HIV and TB in Africa, to righting centuries of wrongs against Europe's largest ethnic minority, the Roma, Soros has championed open society issues around the globe.
What is it that I really care about? Democracy, market, these are the institutions that you need for people to be able to improve their conditions in life.
His experiences as a child in World War II fueled his drive to combat totalitarianism. In the 1980s, his Open Society Foundations helped topple communism in Eastern Europe, strengthening democracy by supporting education, justice, and freedom of information.
Open society can prevail only when people can speak truth to power.
Today, the Open Society Foundations are present in more than 70 countries, including the United States. Soros recently gave $50 million to provide food, shelter, and clothing for New York City's neediest, who were hard hit by the economic crisis. The foundations work to build vibrant and tolerant democracies whose governments are accountable to their citizens. To learn more about George Soros and his philanthropy, visit OpenSocietyFoundations.org.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. And don't forget, he's given all that money, you know, just to help good things. Well, for instance, well, just a lot of these. This is only half the list of the organizations that are helping him accomplish his new world, spooky world order. Yeah. That's it. There are really 2 ways to look at what I do every day here. You can either say, as my critics say, that I'm a fearmonger, or you can say that I am empowering you with information. I hate the fact that some people believe that I'm a fearmonger. I just say what I believe. That's what I do. And I believe bad things are coming. I believe that we can get past them, but we have to be prepared. I've told you over and over again, I hope I'm wrong. But FDR was wrong when he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing we have to fear is not being prepared and not knowing what's really happening. But progressives, they'll say I'm a fearmonger, and they want you to believe that everything is fine, and that's what they'll tell you. Watch.
This is a rich country. We have plenty of money, and if you don't believe me, ask Halliburton.
We've been able to create or save 3.5 million jobs.
Will the Federal Reserve monetize this debt?
The Federal Reserve will not monetize the debt.
That legislation, according to The Economist, has saved or created 3.6 million jobs.
We have turned this economy around.
I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially and withstand some of the disaster scenarios.
Okay. You can believe that, and I hope they're right. They're not, but I hope they're right. You know better. You know the truth. You know. On jobs, really? Unemployment rate, unchanged, 9.6% last night. They told us it would never go over 8. Food prices are rising. You don't believe me? Go shopping. Wall Street Journal now says an inflationary tide is beginning to ripple through the supermarkets and the restaurant. They're still telling you that they're worried about deflation. Don't worry about inflation. Check the price of gas. We're not going to monetize the debt. That was under oath. Really? The Fed just said that they will print more money to buy as much Treasury debt in the next 8 months as the government will issue. Fannie and Freddie, Barney Frank, together they now have twice as many foreclosed homes as they did this time last year. America, we have a historic choice in front of us. Do we open our eyes, or do we keep burying our heads in the sand? Do we end the book called America, or do we just turn the page and begin a new chapter? I've told you, 40-day and 40-night challenge. Please take this. People, we can't be the people who are angry. We can't be those people. They got that covered. We have to be people who say, thank goodness you're here. We have to be the ones who count on faith, hope, and charity from each other. From each other. We don't need a billionaire to activate it. We activate it in ourselves. Hello, America, and happy Veterans Day. Veterans and Marcus Luttrell, I'm thinking about you today. Thank you for everything that you have done. Thank you, all of the spouses that struggle and struggle hard for our freedom. For our freedom to be able to say the things that we mean and mean the things that we say. For our freedom to be able to speak against or speak about the most powerful people in the world and not be crushed because you're the little guy. That's what America is about. To have a difference of opinion. And as George Washington said, meet on the battlefield of ideas. Tonight, part 3. Part 3 on George Soros. I'm going to recap, give you a little bit of new information here. I'm going to recap in the next 10 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you for your decision. These are things that you have to ponder. You can't just take my word for it. You have to decide, am I going to look into this more on my own? Am I going to educate myself? Or am I just going to put my head back in the sand and say, no, 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 it's all fine, it's all fine, it's all fine. Because there is a choice. Who is George Soros? And is he involved in the changes in our country? And if he is, and if he's using his money to greatly influence our country, why don't I know about it? And do I agree with him? Maybe you do. George Soros had a rough childhood. He was born in Hungary in 1930. Not the place you wanted to be in 1930, especially if you were a Jew. His mother was wildly anti-Semitic. Again, for anybody who is crying, you know, oh, there's some sort of anti-Semitic attack from George Soros. No, it's not. I'm not calling his mother an anti-Semite. George Soros did. Those are his words, not mine. Quote, my mother was quite anti-Semitic and ashamed of being Jewish. Given the culture in which we lived, being Jewish was a clear-cut stigma, disadvantage, a handicap, and therefore, she always had the desire to transcend it, to escape it. That is pretty powerful in a child's life. Both of his parents were non-practicing Jews. His real family name was not Soros, it was Schwartz. But what would you do if you lived in Hungary in the 1930s and 40s? Would you keep the name Schwartz? When George was 6 years old, the family changed the name from Schwartz to Soros. Now, at first, it just makes sense on the surface because you're like, okay, well, of course, they were trying to stay alive. They were madmen rounding Jews up. But when you look at the name Soros, it's an obscure name. What does it mean? Where did it come from? Well, it means to soar. But more importantly, it derives from Esperanto, which is a made-up trans-European language. It was started, I think, in the 1880s, and it was promoted by those who dreamt of a world free of nationalities. Get it? A world free of nationalities, an open society. His father was very much into this. That's how they picked the name Soros. So when George Soros was 14, his father basically bribed a government official to take his son in and let him pretend to be a Christian. His father was just trying to keep him alive. He even had to go around confiscating the property of Jewish people. Now imagine, you are Jewish, and you have to go and confiscate the property of your fellow Jews. and you are pretending to not be a Jew, and if anybody finds out, you're dead. He actually had to endure watching people sent off to their eventual murders, watching people gathering their stuff, sending them off, knowing that they were going to go to their death. What does that do to somebody? How do you deal with it? How many years of therapy would somebody need after something like that? This is where George, I think this is important. I think this is where George Soros first learned to pretend to be something other than who he was. He had to. I am not blaming or questioning a 14-year-old or his parents for trying to keep him alive, trying to keep the family alive. I don't think anyone can understand what it must have been like to be Jewish in that scenario. Can you? Especially 14. I don't want to question the 14-year-old. I would, however, like to question the 80-year-old man who has never once said he regretted it, but more than that, he views it as the happiest year of his life. Again, not my words, his words. Listen.
It was actually probably the happiest year of my life, that year of German occupation. For me, it was a very positive experience. It's a strange thing, you know, because you see incredible suffering around you, and in fact, you're in considerable danger yourself. But you're 14 years old, and you don't believe that it can actually touch you. You have a belief in yourself, your belief in your father. It's a very happy-making, exhilarating experience.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe the Holocaust years like that. Maybe he's the most healthy man you've ever met. Maybe somehow or another he just got through it. But he also has spoken about how his experience in Hungary has affected his psyche. Listen to this.
Did anybody tell you in Hungary why they didn't like Jews at the time?
Oh yes, and that of course is something, again, very, very much a part of my psyche, anti-Semitism and you know, hatred of Jews, which was quite widespread within Hungary.
Even to his own home. I mean, I would love to spend an hour. He's not going to come on in this program and spend an hour with me, and we'd have bigger fish to fry on this, but I would love to understand how it affected his psyche, having his mother basically agree, apparently, I don't mean to judge, with the Germans on hatred of Jews, being anti-Semitic in his own home. How has he navigated that? I'm not going to spend the time. I have invited George Soros to come on this program. He has declined. We have bigger fish to fry. Like, how does he view the world? But it sure would be interesting to explore how this affected his feelings on Israel, which he does not support. He donates so much money to organizations that speak out against Israel. Some stick out more than others on the donations. But is there any connection there? I'm going to concentrate on the fact that I think the lesson he learned in that horrific year of 1944 was that if you hide your true identity, you can gain power, you can survive. And those who are seen as disadvantaged or handicapped and don't hide their identity, well, they don't survive. The next formative step in Soros's life was college. Now, this is where he attended the London School of Economics. Now, this is the same school that Hayek was from. He wrote Road to Serfdom. This is freedom fighter. But it's also the school where the Fabian socialists hung out. A Fabian socialist university, you remember. The Fabian window we told you about. This is the famous English Fabian Society. We took this picture, actually. Tony Blair was standing right here with it. Fabian socialists, what are they doing? They're heating the world up in the fire that they themselves are stoking. Why are they heating it up? Because they're about to hammer it and remold it nearer to the heart's desire. Fabian socialists are the American progressives. It's the same thing. Heat the world up, cause the problems, so the world heats up so you can remold it. So Which part of the London School of Economics does Soros favor? The Hayek side or the Fabian side? Which one? This is where he learned about an open society. The Open Society Institute, which is now his charitable arm. Sounds harmless on the outside, but, really, who doesn't want to be open? But when you listen to him at the top of the hour in the beginning of the program, we played that. Notice that logo behind him? That was his Open Society Institute. Can your institute bring in more foreign influence here in America? What is an open society, really? Well, you saw it a moment ago. The world has a vote in Congress, but you also saw it in his father, Soros, a world free of nationalities. It is a global replacement for our republic. For all the work our founders did, that's old news. We must progress past it. We must have a new world order. It is a replacement for the republic. He has donated more than $14 million to a group here in America called the American Constitution Society. Well, that sounds great, except this is a progressive legal group with an area of focus on constitutional interpretation and change. The Constitution can be changed, but you do it not in the shadows. You do it not being invisible. You don't hide who you are. You change it through the amendment process. But he knows you wouldn't go for it. So he leaves school, leaves Hungary, he survives. He goes to school. He finds open society. And then he becomes wealthy. Now, how did he become wealthy enough to fund his quest to denationalize the world? Hedge funds. He has the estimated 5th largest hedge fund in the world. It's called the Quantum Fund, which, George, sometime we should kibitz about the name. It's worth about $27 billion. Now, here's the interesting and funny thing about hedge funds. We hear all the time about the greedy Wall Street brokers. We hear about greedy speculators, greedy bankers. We hear about greedy executives and their obscene bonuses and their expensive carpets and everything else. But why don't we hear more about those greedy hedge fund managers? Is it a coincidence that everything under the sun when it comes to capitalism is targeted for regulation by Congress, except for hedge funds? You should decide on that one. Now, he's got the wealth. Well, what did he do with the wealth? He decided to collapse regimes and currencies. He did it in England, in Russia, Malaysia, Georgia. Soros lit the fuse to get it done. He's known as, we told you last night, the man who broke the Bank of England. The Prime Minister of Malaysia called Soros unscrupulous profiteer. In Thailand, he was branded an economic war criminal who sucks the blood from people. In 1994, he stated, I just write that the former Soviet empire is now called the Soros Empire. He started getting so much recognition, it fed into his ego. His ego started to grow. He started to get a God complex. Again, not my words, his words. Soros confessed in The New Yorker in 1995 that he had a messianic illusion, a sense of himself being superhuman, quote, since childhood, end quote. He saw in himself the many attributes of the God of the Old Testament. Quote, God in the Old Testament has a number of attributes, like invisible. I was pretty invisible. Benevolent. I was pretty benevolent. All-seeing. I tried to be all-seeing. Benevolent, all-seeing. But the one that sticks out here is invisible. You can see his ego on display when he talks about going after regimes. Listen to it's a game.
When you try to, let's say, improve society, you affect different people and different interests differently, and they are not actually commensurate. So you very often have all kinds of unintended adverse consequences. So I had to experiment, and it was a learning process. The first part was this subversive activity, disrupting repressive regimes. That was a lot of fun, and that's actually what got me hooked on this whole enterprise.
Remember, he believes, and so do many in his regime, that Fox News is a repressive regime. America is a repressive regime. He is turning lives and countries upside down and inside out, and he loves it. He says in his own words he got hooked. He has to feed the addiction. So he decides to go after the biggest market yet, America. Quote, "The main obstacle to a new world order is America. You are the main obstacle to what he wants, which is an open society, a replacement for the republic." Well, what does that mean for you? Well, he's talked about it. First, a managed decline of the U.S. dollar. His words, not mine.
So an orderly decline of the dollar is actually desirable.
Does that sound good to you? Does it sound good to you? How much has the price of sugar gone up? How much has your gasoline gone up? Why? Why? Is there a shortage of sugar? No. Your dollar is being devalued. It is going down in an orderly way. Prices go up. Is that what you want? Let me play the clip that we just played one more time at the top of the hour. Listen to this.
The question is whether we need, and whether Mr. Soros and his foundations can help to bring more foreign influence into the United States instead of relying on what is essentially a balance between Democrats and conservative Republicans.
I think you put your finger on a very important flaw in the current world order, and that is that only Americans have a vote in Congress, and yet it is the United States that basically determines policy for the world.
Okay.
That is a flaw in the current setup.
Okay, worthless dollar. Global citizens who are voting on who represents us and what we do. That's what George Soros and an open society looks like. When he's done with America, that's what you will have. Now, how does he achieve it? How does he achieve it? Well, we showed you these 5 steps last night. He's collapsing the economies. He is quite good at it, collapsing the economies. We showed you how he's doing it here in America. He's doing it over and over and over again, all of them. He's doing it, in his words, subversively. Subversively. 5 steps to control. You form a shadow government using humanitarian aid as a cover. Subversive activities. Well, he's doing that with OSI. We told you the shadow conventions. The puppet master is putting on a show. We've been an unwitting audience. Now the curtains are being lifted. We're exposing the extent of his reach. We see who he's surrounding himself with. The guy who's running his charitable arm is the founder of SDS, the guy who started SDS, which was responsible for all of the riots in the 60s. He's now the charity guy. You're seeing him build the shadow party. Again, his words, not mine. He funded the shadow party convention. For 3 days, this program has begun to lift the curtains. Well, where's the media? Most Americans will dismiss that he's not a big threat. This is a conspiracy. Or, with the millions of dollars that he spends, Glenn Beck is just lying. The shadow party, the shadow conventions, like God, he's invisible. In his own words, he called it subversive activity. This is his addiction. But it moves from there. Back in a minute. We're talking about George Soros. It is all there. It is all so well financed, so deeply ingrained that no one even notices it. And it is easy to dismiss, but please do not. The mainstream media does not expose it, and I know why. Look at the reach. Look at what you're up against. After my number 2 guy had a meeting with George Soros's number 2 guy about, 4 weeks ago, and they tried to convince me to shut up with a threat. He turns around and drops $1 million off at Media Matters, who coincidentally joins a boycott against me and my advertisers the very same day. What a coincidence. But they're not alone. Media Matters, MoveOn.org, Tides Foundation, Van Jones, boycott, Jim Wallace, a boycott. Who gets, SCIU and AFL-CIO are involved as well. Who gets money from George Soros? Soros, 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 Soros. No connections that we know of here. Is that a coincidence? Look, I know that soon, the gates of hell are going to be opened up. I did this for a reason. Not for ratings, certainly. There's nothing more sexy than, George Soros talk. I did it because I believe it. And I believe you need to know the only way to stop it is the sunlight. We could argue about this for days. I could present hours of evidence. But any thinking honest American can see smoke and fire. I'm not going to convince those that are asleep or cry ignorance or bury their heads or are just playing left-right, Republican, Democrat politics. Ask yourself this: could I put on 3 hours of television with nothing but lies and smear and keep my job against the most powerful man and the most powerful groups in the world? Couldn't be done. How do I know? Because I saw Orson Welles try to do it to William Randolph Hearst. I know Orson Welles. I read about his life. He died alone, broke, and very fat. In the end, you go against that kind of power and you will be destroyed. I get it. I've made my choice. This is Citizen Kane, but mine is not a movie. I wish it were. My 3-hour epic has been just to do this. Please, go and find the truth yourself. Do not take my word for any of it. No tricks, no Hollywood. Him in his own words. It is time to take a stand. What this boils down to is a man with a lifetime of being consistent, of stating his goals and destroying currencies and countries, and then stating his goal that America and her currency is next. Well, we know he wasn't lying the last 4 times. We know he wasn't lying when he said he wanted to be invisible. It boils down to this. Which is a bigger leap of faith? That he is still telling the truth and executing his plan exactly the same way he has done 4 other times? Or this time he's lying about it, and this is the exception. America, you have to decide, because your children, my children's freedom and the republic is at stake. We have done so much research for these shows. We have gone through everything for these shows. I mean, reams of paperwork. You don't think the attorneys went through all of this stuff? These shows are posted online at glennbeck.com and theblaze.com. The transcripts, everything is there. The transcript of the CBS interview, where he expresses how he has no regrets of being told to confiscate the property of his own people, pretend that he wasn't one of them. There's this book. This is a must-read. David Horowitz, Richard Poe, does an amazing job of explaining how the radical left has infiltrated the Democratic Party. When you read this, you will understand. Richard Poe also wrote a special piece that is being sent out on my free email newsletter tomorrow at glennbeck.com. It shows an example of how George Soros interfered in Kenya in 2007 in the elections, and how that interference played a role in creating complete chaos there. I want you to also do this. You don't listen to anybody, and you just don't listen to what somebody says about something, and take my word for it, or his word for it. Look for the original documents and the original reports. This is a document from the Committee of Un-American Activities, 1961. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. It features an essay explaining the radicals' top-down, bottom-up theory. This was never supposed to be released. It was. We found it on microfilm in the public library. I'm going to put a copy out of it at theblaze.com or glennbeck.com. You'll see it, but go to your library, see if you can get a microfilm copy of it. And finally, don't read just one point of view. Please, read the arguments. Decide for yourself. You've got George Soros on An Open Society. You have this one from George Soros. You have Alchemy of Finance. You have so many books on George Soros that you can read yourself. Read his point of view. Arm yourself with information. There is no harm in reading what the man has to say, because it exposes him more than anything else. But there are other crucial steps that I'd ask you to take. And I'll outline those next. I often wonder how I will be remembered in history. I think I know, unfortunately, I think I know the answer to that. But if I had my choice, I would like to be remembered for a few things. Question with boldness, hold to the truth, and speak without fear. If you can only learn one thing from this show, I hope it is that. Find out for yourself. There are so many people that are laying a smokescreen down, so you don't know what's going on. You must do your own homework, because only when you do you remember your teacher used to say, show your work, show your work. Why? Because if you could see the work, then she knew you knew it. Why was that important? I don't know for me, because I never had to use math a day in my life. But a lot of people use math all the time. You had to know. Show your work. Do your own homework. This week we have focused on George Soros. Has anyone challenged a single fact with one of their own? I'm playing him in his own words. And what do? They call me all kinds of names. I think the most popular is going to be, if I had to guess, their attack is going to be that I'm an anti-Semite, which does not even make any sense. First of all, no one's a bigger defender of the Jews in Israel than me. Name them on television. I'll walk down, I tell you what, George, you and I will walk down the streets of Israel together. Let's go to Jerusalem, you and me. Let's see which one of us is more popular. Doesn't make sense. George Soros is a Jewish-born atheist who is anti-Israel. So please. Now, when I talk to you about what you need to do in order to be prepared for hard times that I believe are coming, if they're not, make fun of me in 2 years from now. Make fun of me all you want. Please just listen to the possibility. When I say be prepared for the things that are coming as a result of all these progressive Republican and Democratic policies, I'm called a fearmonger. Well, it doesn't address whether or not those things are happening. They can call me whatever they want. I don't care. Here is what is coming. Inflation, higher interest rates, higher energy prices, higher food prices. So prepare. I'll say it again. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That was a nice sounding slogan, but what does that even mean? Nothing. The only thing we have to fear is being unprepared. When you're prepared, you don't fear. But more and more propaganda is coming in the days and weeks ahead, because they're intentionally putting us into a pressure cooker. They are intentionally putting us here. And the more things heat up and get out of control, the more the government will be forced to clamp down. Have you watched Star Wars? They're already telling you things that are not true. Like deflation is coming, not inflation. Well, that might be true in the housing market, but have you gone to the grocery store? We can see that with our own eyes. Go to the grocery store. Pump the gas. Notice the price. Has it gone up? Why has it gone up? Inflation. They're deflating. They are collapsing the dollar in a controlled way. You can see these things are not true. Now, here's what I believe, that people are waking up in waves. The first wave happened really with a Tea Party. It happened about 1.5 years ago. But I sense another wave of people waking up is coming. And we have to be ready to welcome them. There are more unemployed. There will be more people that are struggling as groceries go up much, much more. I showed you the predicted inflation prices on certain items. This is from the, what was it, the American Inflation Institute or something. I don't know if any of this is true. $77 for a can of coffee. Will that happen? I don't know. We called several experts to verify. You think this is true? They said no, they don't think that's true because they just think people won't have any money to be able to afford $77 coffee. So it might stop at $40, but nobody will be able to buy it. I don't know. I just do know that everything in your grocery store and at the gas pump will cost more soon. So what to do? Have faith. Have hope in the truth and charity in your heart. You must be a shelter for others. Just like when George Soros was growing up in Hungary, there were those hostile forces inside of the government and outside of the government. You must be a shelter for others. You can't panic. I've told you before about the Titanic. When the ship hit that iceberg, many of the passengers stayed in their cabins. Well, pretty soon, the water was coming up into their rooms. I don't think this is actual footage of the Titanic, but water started coming into their rooms. Before they knew it, it was up to their ankles. Then it was waist high. That is what's happening to America. And as it goes up floor by floor, as this thing starts to, more people come out onto the deck. More people will begin to wake up. You have to be educated so you can quickly educate them and then help them while they are freaking out. You won't be panicking because you're not a fearmonger. I'm not a fearmonger. We're just the ones being prepared. In the coming weeks, in the coming months, I'm going to give you several action plans because I am not going to spend the time. I'm not going to get any more people into this boat. So it is time for us now to say, okay, how do we, when people wake up, how do we get other people to help us build a bigger life raft? Next year, we're not going to just change ourselves. We're going to change the world. We're going to build life rafts for the rest of the world. I'm going to help you help your neighbors. Big, tremendous, powerful, great things are coming. In the meantime, I want you to think about this pressure cooker that is coming in more ways than one. And I'll explain that next. Oh, I'm giving free gifts to the Jon Stewart God. Inflation is coming. So now, how do you prepare for it? Well, you stock up on food. I know how crazy this is. They're going to paint me for this, but that's okay. Do you even recognize what this is? My grandparents went through the Great Depression, and because of that, they knew what tough times were all about. They never wanted to experience it again, so this is a pressure cooker. They prepared. See, they didn't have the option of going to the stores and getting all the food and everything. It wasn't the same. What they did is they would go out into the fields and then they would can their own food and they'd store it in jars like this. How many of us have done this? How many of us even do this? But it's not necessarily canning your food that you have to. How many of us forgot the lessons that we were taught by our parents and our grandparents? They taught us not to live in debt. My grandparents had a ton of food canned in the basement, and so did my family. My mom used to can all summer long. And my parents, I think they just did it on purpose. They put it in the spookiest part of the basement. All the food would be there. And then my mom would go, oh, go get some corn. I'd be like, no, Mom, don't make me go to the basement. We ran out of something in the kitchen. Mom or my grandma would say, go run downstairs and get it. Send you down to the basement to get a canned bottle of corn. It was the most frightening thing she would ever ask me to do. I mean, I always thought there were bodies and dead zombies working down there, you know what I mean? But that was the grocery store in the old days when we were growing up. I'm probably the last generation that really remembers that, a trip to the basement. I called my Aunt Joanne. Hi, Aunt Joanne and Uncle Dave. I called my Aunt Joanne just the other day. She said, I just finished canning for the season. She's been doing it all summer. She's still doing it. My family, we are not canning, but we are purchasing food. We've done it over the last year. You don't want to go out and run and just put all your money out there. So we did it in little bits and drabs, and we went and we got the food. Now we have a year's supply. If nothing happens, that's cool. I'll tell you, as a dad, there's nothing that has been more stress relieving than me sitting down on the steps, and I never saw this coming. I never thought this would happen. I sat on the steps and I looked at that year's worth of food, that accomplishment. And I know this isn't a surprise, I actually wept out of relief I thought I could lose my job and my kids are going to be fine. You might not lose your job. Maybe everything I say is coming doesn't happen. That's okay. That's all right. Maybe somebody down the street loses their job. You can be a shelter and a comfort for others, for your family. This is what we have to do. First of all, teach yourself. Read the original sources. Read the truth. Don't just take my word for it. Find out for yourself. If they make fun of you, fine. Prepare to be a shelter and a teacher for others because they will come. And be who you were born to be. Yes, I can because I am. I am worthy. I'm competent. I'm smart enough to do it. Do these things. Get yourself out of debt. Have the essentials that you need, lots of them, on your shelf. And in 2 years, if nothing has happened, and then you really want, I mean, really, I mean this sincerely, we can all get together and you can all mock me. It's okay. Right now, why don't you store that mocking up for a rainy day? Let's wait for 2 years. Just wait. If we don't need it, if everything's fine, mock me all you want. Please. Just do your own homework. Listen to your gut. And consider sanity for just a moment. Remember the voice of your grandparents. Last night, my wife Tanya and I were laying in bed, and she says to me, "Hey, you've just been nominated for Time Magazine's Person of the Year." And I said, "Go to sleep." I woke up in the morning and I found out that it was true. Sorry, honey. Sarah Palin was also nominated. You got to be kidding me. Sarah Palin actually deserves, think of the impact that this woman has made going around the country rallying people to get behind true conservative candidates. She made a huge, huge difference this year. I noticed that there was one face that was missing, actually millions of faces that were missing. It was the Tea Partiers. The Tea Partiers should actually be this year's winner. I'm not a fan. I hate it when they nominate groups of people and they're like, "Oh, look, it's a person of the year." It's not a person, it's a group. But they are the true winners. I mean, look at the difference that you have made. Here are some of Time's nominees: Barack Obama, Lady Gaga, Steve Jobs, the unemployed worker, David Koch, Charles Koch, and Mark Zuckerberg. Also BP CEO Tony Hayward. Oh, and the communist leader of China, Hu Jintao. So, and then, of course, there's me, because you always have to have a bad guy on the list. You know what I mean? You have to. Maybe they didn't mention the Tea Party because they mentioned Koch brothers. They're nominated. They're supposedly the driving monetary force behind the Tea Party movement. Really? But if that's, why wouldn't you put this guy up? I mean, he's, you know what I'm saying? It again shows how much the mainstream media and the left just doesn't get it. Time magazine said that the unemployed American was the one that made the difference in this election cycle. I'd like to see their evidence on that. I mean, it is the idea that things aren't working. But 4 in 10 of the voters supported the ideas of the Tea Party. 4 in 10. But if they mention that, then it looks like it might be a big movement, and the president's policies had something to do with the outcome, and we can't have that. The mainstream media and the left continue not to get it. Know that you deserve the accolades, but you won't get the accolades. Believe me, I'm not going to win. I'm not writing a accepted speech on this one. Just know who you are and know that you are the person of the year. More importantly, soon on this program, we're going to start building the people of the decade.